Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei was true White Dragon Emperor? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Issei Hyoudou, a young boy about 5 years old with brown hair, save for a few strands of silver and blue eyes, currently wearing a tank top and underwear, is lay asleep, having a strange dream. Little did he know, this dream would change his life forever. Dreamscape, where am I? Issei is currently walking around the blank space of his dream, looking for any form of movement from within the void. From the corner of his eye, he saw a white figure moving at extreme speeds. He quickly jolted his to the direction of the blur, hoping to find out the identity of the unknown creature. "So this is my host," a booming voice was heard, causing Issei to jump from the intense volume. Issei turned his head to find the owner of the strange voice and stood awestruck at the sight before him. "This is the first time I have had a host so young. You must be quite strong to have awakened me so early in your life." Issei's eyes went wide in recognition. What he saw was a large white western dragon with blue eyes and two golden horns atop its head. "Hey, are you Albion, the heavenly dragon? So you know who I am?" Issei nodded his head. "My O2 told me that we were descendants of Albion when I discovered my dragon wings." This time it was Albion's turn, widen his eyes. Before laughing heartily, which caused Issei to tilt his head in confusion. "To think I am wielded by my own descendant. You, child, have the potential to become my strongest host yet." "What do you mean, host?" Issei asked, still confused at how his ancestor could be in his head. "Are you not aware of the sacred gears?" Issei shook his head in reply. "I see, well then I shall tell you," Albion said before transforming himself and the area around him. The two were now sitting in an empty cafe. Albion was sitting opposite Issei in his human form, white spiked hair, a well-toned body, wearing a white biker jacket over a light blue undershirt and white slacks. "I'm going to keep this short as we don't have much time before you wake up. Sacred gears are basically weapons created by God of the Bible, bestowed upon humans by the system in heaven, all with different appearances and abilities." Issei nodded in understanding. "Among the sacred gears, there are 13 that stand out above the rest, known as the Longinus, each with the potential to kill God if you can master it." "So what does this have to do with me?" he asked curiously. "Wait, does this mean you're a sacred gear?" "Not exactly, I am the spirit residing in the sacred gear. I was sealed inside dividing after my death." "How did you die?" "You know of the rivalry between Dreg and I, right?" Issei nodded. "Well, the fight started during the Great War, when the angels, devils and fallen angels were fighting. The three powers saw us fighting and mutually agreed to put a stop to our fight and killed us both. We were then sealed in sacred gears. Dreg was put in the boosted gear and I in dividing. I should tell you now that those who wield our sacred gears are destined to fight, so you should use the early awakening as an advantage to prepare for your encounter with the Red One." Issei nodded before his eyes widened in realization. "So you're saying that I have your sacred gear?" Albion nodded before looking out of the window. "It's almost time for you to wake up. When you do, I will run through the steps on how to activate the sacred gear." Issei nodded. "Speak to you soon, partner." Hyoudou residence. "Issei, time to wake up, breakfast is ready," Issei's mother shouted from the other side of his door. "Yawn okay Kos," and Issei said tiredly as he got up from his bed. Yawning again as he recalled the events in his dream. Was that all just a dream? "That was no dream, partner." Issei jumped slightly at the voice that seemingly appeared from out of nowhere. "So it wasn't a dream, I really do have a sacred gear." "Yes you do, but before we activate it, you should probably go downstairs like your Aka-sen asked you to." Issei nodded before asking, "Should I tell my parents? I've heard that my 2-sen was really strong when he was younger, so maybe he can help me train." Albion grunted in agreement before adding, "That would help a lot. You said he is my descendant, right?" He mentally nods in agreement. "Then there's no doubt that he knows of the rivalry between the Sekiryuite and the Hakuryuku, so I'm sure he'll want to prepare you as best he can for your inevitable fight." "Ice, hurry up, your breakfast's getting cold," his mother shouted, snapping him out of his conversation with Albion. "Humming," he shouted back before getting dressed and bolting down the stairs. As he arrived in the dining room, he saw a woman who looked to be in her late 20s, with brown hair reaching her waist, tied in a ponytail and blue eyes. She was wearing a white blouse and brown pants, with an apron over the top. This woman was Hitomi Hyoudou, formerly Ambrosius, and as he entered he noticed the angry expression on her face, while her hands were planted on her hips as she scolded her son. "What in the world were you doing up there? I called you over 10 minutes ago." Issei gulped nervously while the other person in the room chuckled to himself. He was a tall, well-built man with a head of unkempt silver hair, with blue eyes, wearing a black formal suit, minus the tie which loosely hung around his neck and the overcoat which was placed on the back of the chair. He folded his newspaper and placed it on the table while sipping his coffee before speaking. "There's no need to get so mad, Hitomi. It was only 10 minutes," he said before finishing with a smile. His wife sighed. "I know that Tetsuya, but his lessons begin today. His tutor will arrive expecting a capable student, which won't be Issei if he doesn't eat his breakfast." She turned to Issei and looked at him curiously. "What were you doing anyway?" I was talking to Albion-san after he said this. His parents both stared at him dumbfounded as his father spoke. How did you speak to Albion? He said that he was sealed in the sacred gear I have inside of me. Both of his parents' jaws dropped when they absorbed this new information. Say Albion-san, can we activate the sacred gear yet? Sure thing partner, just stand in an open space. He nodded before moving to the open corner of the room as his parents looked at him curiously. What are you doing? His father asked him. Albion-san is telling me how to activate the sacred gear. His father nodded. Now focus your energy on the area where your wings appear, but don't allow your wings to come out. Issei did as he was told. Suddenly there was a bright flash that caused the Hyoudou family to cover their eyes. When they opened them, Issei's parents looked at him shocked. He noticed this and followed their gaze to his back. There he saw a pair of white wings with blue feathers that looked like they were made of energy. This is divine dividing, like the name suggests, it has the power to divide things. To use it, you have to make contact with a person, then the wings will automatically divide his or her power every 10 seconds and give it to you. If you want to dismiss it, just think about turning it off. Albion spoke. Amazing, a descendant of Albion, who also wields Albion. Issei's father said as he dismissed divine dividing. Dusan, can you help me train? I want to be able to use this sacred gear thing, and to do that I need to get stronger, Issei asked with determination. His father looked to be deep in thought for a moment before frowning slightly. I'm afraid I'm a bit too busy with work to help you, son. The best I could do for you is write some sort of training program for now. Hearing this, Issei nods vigorously. That'll be fine, I wouldn't need anything too advanced for a while. Very well, I'll write it up during my lunch break and give it to you at the end of the day. For now, you should just focus on the lessons you have today. Tsaya replied with his wife nodding in agreement. Okay said, a determined smile adorned his face as his parents watched on amused. Time skip 1 year later. Issei was dedicated to getting stronger, although the training was basic at best, he had still grown to be considerably stronger over the year he trained. It was currently the weekend. Issei had taken the day off from his training. He and his parents were on their way to meet with one of Hitomi's old friends at the shrine on top of the hill. The three were walking peacefully as Issei spoke up. Where are we going, Aki-san? The 6-year-old asked curiously. We're going to visit an old friend of mine. She's a shrine maiden at the shrine up the hill, she said, while pointing to the top of the staircase leading to the shrine. Issei paled slightly at the number of steps he would have to climb. The Hyoudou family made their way up the stairs and found themselves staring at a shrine, which looked to have been taken care of extremely well. While the three were admiring the view, they heard a sudden voice. Hitomi, is that you? All three looked in the same direction to see a young woman, about Hitomi's height with raven black hair and violet eyes. She was wearing a shrine maiden's outfit, consisting of a white haori with red accents, a red hakama, and a pair of zori with white tabi. Behind the woman was a young girl, about Issei's age. She appeared to be a miniature version of her mother. The same features, with the same clothes, albeit a smaller size. Hey, Shuri, it's been a long time, hasn't it? Issei's mother replied with a smile. The girl who was hiding behind the now named Shuri peeked her head around Shuri's leg as a voice was heard from behind the two girls. Shuri? Said woman turned around and saw a middle-aged, gruff-looking man with black hair, matching beard and a muscular body. Who are these people? This is my friend, Hitomi from high school, with who I assume to be her husband and son. She said with a questioning glance towards her old friend. That's right, this is my husband Tsaya, he waved with a smile as he was introduced, and my son Issei. Hitomi noticed the young girl behind her childhood friend and turned to her son Issei. Honey, she looks like she might be the same age as you, so why don't you go and introduce yourself? Issei nodded before walking slowly forward and bowing. My name's Issei Hyoudou, I'm 6 years old. The girl looks up to her mother and walks forward when she receives a nod in return. Akeno Himejima, I'm 7, she says timidly. Wanna go play together? Akeno's face considerably brightens when he says this. Can we go, please? She asked her parents. They chuckle lightly before replying, yes, but don't go too far. As she said that, Akeno hugged her mother and father before grabbing Issei's hand and running off to play. Shuri watched the two run off together as she whispered into her husband's ear. Do you think she'll show him what she really is? Shuri looks conflicted for a second as he whispers back. If she does, I hope he doesn't think of her any differently. She seems really scared of her other half. He seems like a nice boy, and if he's Hitomi's son, then he probably inherited her kindness too. She shook her head as she spoke to their two guests. Well, shall we go in? I'll make us some tea, and we can catch up with each other. The Hiatus nodded and followed Shuri into the shrine. Time skipped 6 months. Akeno and Issei quickly became best friends after the day they met. Whenever Issei wasn't training or with his tutor, he was at the shrine with Akeno. They even slept at each other's houses from time to time. Both fathers were good friends with each other, they even went out drinking on occasion, and their mothers were still friends like they were in high school. Akeno and Issei were exploring the nearby forest when Akeno suddenly turned around with a sad expression on her face. Is everything alright, Akeno-chan? You look a little sad. Issei asked, a worried expression plastered on his face. Nah, Issei-kun, if I was something different, would you hate me? Akeno replied with a shaky voice. Of course not, it wouldn't matter what you are, you'll always be the Akeno-chan that I know, he told her with a smile. Akeno had a hopeful expression on her face, she smiles at his words, with tears threatening the corners of her eyes, as she turned away from Issei and let out her wings. Issei looked shocked for a second before realizing what she meant. She was afraid I wouldn't like her, because she's a fallen angel. Seeing Issei's shocked face broke her heart as she spoke. I'm a fallen angel, Issei-san, you must think I'm a freak, she said softly as tears slowly fell from her eyes. She closed her eyes thinking the worst, but promptly widened them in shock as she felt something stroking her wings. Turning around, she saw Issei with a small smile on his face as he slowly caressed the black feathers spread across her back. You're beautiful, Akeno-chan, with or without wings. There is nothing wrong with being different, in fact, we're more alike than you think. Akeno tilted her head in confusion before they widened once more as Issei released his dragon wings. See, I'm not exactly normal either, I'm a dragon. You aren't a freak, Akeno-chan, you are a beautiful person, no matter what you are. He said as she turned to him, wiping the tears from her eyes, wearing the biggest smile he has ever seen. However, while he was busy looking at her face, he failed to notice her edging forward slightly before lunging straight at him and wrapping him in a tight hug before crashing her lips onto his. Issei went wide-eyed at the sudden act of affection from Akeno, sure she would constantly tease him to no end, but that was all because she was a sadist, and while she has kissed him on the cheek before, he was shocked to say the least. He remained shocked for all of 5 seconds before slowly easing up and returning the kiss with just as much passion he was receiving from Akeno. After a minute, they broke off the kiss for air, blushing heavily as Akeno spoke with a teasing smile. How did you enjoy our first kiss, Issei-kun? Said person just looked away with an even bigger blush before mumbling incoherently, what was that? I enjoyed it, Akeno-chan, he said while blushing up a storm, fighting in vain to suppress it. Akeno giggled at his reaction before dismissing her wings. Issei noticed this and did the same. Akeno then grabbed his hand and began to drag him back to her house. Come on, Ice-kun, Ka-san said, dinner is gonna be ready soon. Issei smiled as he allowed Akeno to drag him to her home. It was now late in the night and Issei was saying his goodbyes to Akeno and her parents as he began to walk home. So Akeno, the girl in question, turned to her father at the call of her name, judging by the expression on your face and the blush on his face, I'm guessing he took it well. She nodded happily at Barakiel's question. He told me I was beautiful, even if I am a fallen angel, he even showed me his wings. Barakiel and Shuri both looked confused at this newfound information. He has wings too, what is he? Her father asked curiously. He's a dragon. Her parents were once again shocked at this discovery. Now that you mention it, I did feel a dragonic aura around Issei. I had thought that it was just a sacred gear, but to think he was a dragon. Well, whoever he gets the dragon side from is very good at hiding their aura. Say, Akeno, why was Issei blushing while you two got back? Her mother asked with the same teasing smile Akeno wears. Akeno blushed as she answered. I kissed him on the lips. Her face was colored a deep crimson as she admitted this to her parents, causing them to roar out in laughter, which only caused her more embarrassment. As the laughter died down, her father patted her on the shoulder and said, I approve of your choice, Akeno, he is a good boy, I can tell. And from the looks of things he likes you just as much. Shuri nodding in agreement as Akeno hummed happily at the thought of being together with Issei. Time skip 1 year later. Issei's parents had left on a business trip to Kyoto for a few days, so they had requested that the Himejima family look after him for them. Of course, Issei was ecstatic to be spending more time with Akeno, so he eagerly accepted to stay. Barakiel had helped Issei train for the first 3 days, as he was required to return to the Grigori for a mission the day after, where he would stay for a few days. Over the year Issei had spent with Akeno and her family, Issei thought of Shuri as a mother figure, even though he already had one. It was late at night. Issei, Akeno and Shuri were playing card games together when Issei's nose suddenly twitched and he adopted a serious look. Shuri noticed this and asked him about it. Is something wrong, Issei? I can sense something bad. Shuri widened her eyes as she heard what he said. Then suddenly an explosion was heard at the front door. Aki-san, what's going on? Akeno yelled over the loud banging noises. Shuri panicked while leading the 2 children into another room where she thought they would all be safe. There you are, the trio gasped as they looked upon their assailants, 2 men clad in black uniforms covering their entire body. Each with a pair of black feathered wings sprouting from their backs. Now that we've found you, it's time to die. I won't let you. Issei yelled as he jumped in front of Shuri and fired off a dragon shot at one of the fallen angels, completely destroying him without a trace. However, in that attack, he used up a lot of his own energy to kill the fallen one. After the attack dissipated, he knelt on the ground in front of Shuri, breathing heavily, hoping to recover enough energy to fight off the second fallen angel. Nice try, boy. All you've done is help me kill you all faster. As he said this, he kicked Issei, sending him towards the wall, which he hit with a sickening thud as a crack was resounded throughout the room. Issei screamed in pain as he fell to the floor. Both Akeno and Shuri looking towards him in worry as the former called out, "Issei." Akeno tried to run towards him, only for a spear of light to pierce the ground in front of her, effectively stopping her in her tracks. "Don't worry little girl, you'll be joining him right after I kill your cause." And hearing this, Issei and Akeno went wide-eyed as Shuri began to fight back, only for the fallen angel to pierce her chest with a spear of light. The spear dispersed itself as Shuri fell to the ground, dying in a puddle of her own blood. Issei and Akeno stared at Shuri with tears flowing down their eyes. All Akeno could feel at the moment was sadness as she sat there kneeling on the ground staring into her mother's lifeless eyes. "Why are you crying girl, you'll be the one to die next," he said with a mad cackle. Issei was feeling a completely different set of emotions, beginning with sadness and ending in pure rage. Growling lowly, he stood up, completely ignoring the pain that he felt coursing through his left arm from the impact against the wall. The fallen seemed to notice this and smirked. "Oh, up for more are you boy? I will kill you." In any normal situation, Issei's eyes would be a light blue color, representing serenity and calm. In this situation however, they had changed into the eyes of a dragon, no iris, just the sclera and a sharp pupil in the dead center. The sclera themselves were royal blue, his eyes piercing the fallen angel's very soul. "For what you have done to Shuri-san. And for what you would have done to Akeno-chan, the price is death," he yelled at the top of his lungs. "Balance break." Issei's body glowed, his very being radiating pure power. Suddenly the glow flashed brighter than before, blinding the fallen angel momentarily. When he opened his eyes however, he saw a figure clad in a silver white armor adorned with blue jewels. Vanishing Dragon Balance Breaker. What is this? What's going on? This, partner, is Balance Breaker, the most powerful manifestation of the sacred gears. Divine Dividing reacted to your rage and released the ultimate form Scale Mail. In this form, you don't have a time limit between divide usage on attacks. You have also gained 2 new abilities, though I recommend that you don't use them until your body can take massive amounts of energy. Tell me the moves afterwards Albion-san, for now just tell me how long I can last in this thing. You've only just activated Balance Breaker, so you have a 30-minute time limit by default. This can be increased by more powerful emotions or by training in this form. In a flash of white light, Issei charged at the fallen angel and crashed through the walls of the shrine, eventually breaking through the outer walls, ending up in the forest. As the two reached a clearing, Issei used his strong arm to punch the fallen in the chest, sending him into a clearing in the forest. The fallen managed to stand up despite the pain he was feeling. This was short-lived, however, as he felt his strength leave him. Falling to one knee he was panting slightly as he struggled to produce a spear of light. After making a spear in both hands, he wasted no time in throwing them at Issei. Issei easily deflected both spears with his hand. "How long until I reach my limit?" "You have 5 more uses of divide before your reserves are filled to the brim." Issei nodded before adopting a serious look. Divide. The fallen angel was now lay on the floor, obviously not used to the amount of power being drained from him. He looked up at the armor-clad figure in fear. "You killed Shuri-san and you tried to kill Akeno-chan. For that, you will die." As he said those final 5 words, he lifted his hand and faced his palm towards the fallen and began to form a blue ball of energy in his hand. "Goodbye fallen," he said coldly before firing off the dragon shot, completely obliterating the fallen angel and the many trees in his wake. After feeling the power leave his body, he dropped to one knee and struggled to catch his breath as his balance breaker dispersed. After resting for a minute he spoke up. "Albion, can you control the wings and take me back to the shrine? I don't think I'll be able to walk back and Akeno-chan might still be in danger." "Sure thing, partner, just be careful. You were foolish and wasted a lot of energy killing the fallen angel." Issei mentally nodded. I failed him." Albion was confused at this. "Failed who?" "Arakiel-san, I promised that I would protect Shuri-san and Akeno-chan while he was gone. I failed him." He spoke to Albion as the tears continued to fall down his face. "He wouldn't blame you for what happened, you were not the one who killed her." By the time Issei returned to the shrine, it was in ruins. The main house was set alight and the rest was a pile of rubble. He fell to his knees, fearing that the worst had happened to Akeno. When he thought it was all over, he collapsed onto all fours, unintentionally ducking under a spear of light aimed for his head. So you're still alive, huh? Those incompetent fools can't do anything right." Issei turned to the voice to see a tall man wearing a long trench coat with 3 pairs of pitch black feathered wings sprouting from his back. "Well, if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself." As he said this, he formed a large spear of light in his hand. "Any last words, boy? Why did you kill them? Why are you attacking me?" The fallen angel laughed loudly at the question. "Because boy, that woman was important to Barakiel, and let's just say me and a few others don't like him very much. As for you, my master thinks that you could become a threat to us fallen angels. If you learn how to use that sacred gear, you might join the devil or the angels, then we would have a big problem on our hands." He readied his arms as he finished his lecture. "Now it's time to die." He threw the spear faster than Issei could see. He made to dodge the spear by jumping to the left, however he was too slow as the spear pierced his right shoulder. Issei cried out in pain as he fell to the floor, clutching the wound as the spear dispersed. "Oh, so you survived that one, eh? Well, you won't live through the next one." He created a new light spear and threw it, aiming to pierce Issei's chest. Before it could reach him, however, the spear suddenly exploded. "Get away from my son," an angry voice yelled. Both Issei and the fallen looked towards the voice to see Hitomi with her hand stretched outwards and Tetsuya flying towards the fallen quicker than anyone could comprehend. As he reached the man, he swiftly sent a punch to the fallen's face, sending him flying towards the rubble. "Issei, are you alright?" Hitomi asked as she ran towards her son with tears in her eyes, gasping as she noticed the wound in his shoulder and began to heal it. Turning around, she saw her husband exiting the shrine. He walked over to check on them. "Is he alright?" he asked with concern in his voice as he gazed upon his son's prone form. "He'll be fine, I've already healed the wound. He just needs to rest for now. Any news on Shuri or Akeno?" He shook his head before adorning a sad expression on his face. "Shuri, she's dead," with a gaping hole in her chest. "As for Akeno, I can't find her anywhere. It's like she just disappeared." After hearing this, Hitomi was incredibly saddened by the death of her best friend, and the tears she had shed for her son's injuries increased tenfold at hearing the bad news. "Take Issei home, I need a few moments to myself." Tetsuya kissed her on the forehead, then took Issei down the steps. After paying her respects to her best friend, she leaves the shrine and goes back to her house, planning on asking Issei about what happened. The next day, Issei woke up in his bed, rubbing his eyes as he attempted to sit up before he felt a sharp pain in his arm. He looked around his room curiously until his eyes widened when he remembered the events of the previous night played in his mind, causing him to cry. A few minutes later, his parents walked in and comforted him. He calmed down after 30 minutes before speaking. "Oh, to-san, I wasn't strong enough. I promised Barakiel-san that I would protect them, but I failed him," he said in between sobs. Hearing this, his parents shared a concerned look while frowning. His father thought for a moment before responding. "I'm sure Barakiel-san wouldn't blame for what happened to them. You were not the one who killed them. You shouldn't blame yourself." "I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it. I feel responsible for their deaths. I want to become stronger. I don't want to lose another friend." Tetsuya looked towards his wife, giving her an almost pleading look. Knowing what her husband was asking, she considered saying no until she glanced towards Issei, who looked absolutely heartbroken at the thought of his best and only friend being dead. She sighed, then nodded towards Tetsuya. Issei, the boy in question, turned his attention towards his father. "I have a couple of friends that owe me some favors. If you want, I can ask them to train you." Issei's expression brightened as he heard this. "However, you will have to live near them if you want to train with them. Plus there's no guarantee that they can give you the training you want." Issei nodded seriously. "If I can get stronger, I don't mind, but I will come back to visit when I'm free," he said with a smile. "Alright, I'll take you to meet them." Hitomi stepped forward before speaking next. "I don't mind you doing this, but you better keep up with your studies. I'll be testing you every month, and if you score less than 80% on any of them, you will return home immediately." "Got it." Issei nodded quickly before his father coughed into his hand. "Alright Issei, go get something to eat and get ready to meet your new sensei." "Okay dad," was the last thing he said before running downstairs. Issei and Tetsuya emerged from the dragon portal in a mountainous area. The two observed their surroundings, Issei looking around in amazement and Tetsuya with a look of nostalgia. Deciding that they'd spent enough time standing around, Tetsuya began to walk off to one of the larger mountains after calling for his son to follow. About 20 minutes into their walk, they come across a large cave, which is supposedly their destination, if the look on Tetsuya's face was any indication. "It's been a long time since I was last here." Tetsuya spoke with a bright smile on his face. After shaking out of his reverie, he turns to Issei. "Well, let's go in." The two walk in the cave, the only noise being the echo of their footsteps hitting the stone floor. As they get further into the cave, a light can be seen and a deep voice heard, muttering something to someone else. When they reach what seems to be the doorway, they see two dragons, the first a 15-meter purple western dragon. And the second was a 10-meter tall red western dragon. The two dragons in the room turn when they hear footsteps, only to see Tetsuya and Issei, the former with a smirk and the latter a look of awe and slight fear. After studying the two carefully, the purple dragon's eyes widen. He turns to the other dragon and dismisses it before speaking. "Tetsuya, is that you?" "Long time no see, Tannin," he said with a small smile. "Yes, it has been a while. How have you been, old friend?" "I've been well, my friend. I'm actually here for something important." He turned around and gestured for Issei to walk next to him. "This is my son, Issei. Unfortunately, his best friend and her mother were killed by rogue fallen angels, and even though I tell him it's not his fault, he still believes that he is to blame for not being able to save them." He spoke sadly. Tannin looked at Issei and spoke. "I'm sorry for your loss, young one. You have my condolences." Issei nodded his head in thanks. "So what is this important business?" He asked, already having a good idea of what it was. Issei looked towards his father, who nodded. He stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Please train me, I want to get stronger," Tannin smirked after hearing his request. "So you want my help?" Issei nodded. "If you want my training, you will have to work for it. I will not train someone with no potential to grow. If you want my help, you will have to show me your resolve." Seeing Issei's determined face, he smirked and grabbed the two. "Then we shall fight. I will test your strength and see if you deserve my assistance." After saying this, the three flew upwards out of the cave and over to what looked like a battlefield. Tannin placed the two on the ground and flew about 100 feet away. His eyes widened in shock when Issei activated Divine Dividing. Balance break, balance break. The voices of Issei and Albion sounded at the same time as a familiar white armor began to form around him. Vanishing Dragon Balance Breaker. Amazing, not only are you the descendant of Albion, but to have his sacred gear as well, this will be fun. Tannin smirked widely before flapping his wings and charging straight at Issei. Issei did the same thing, aiming for Tannin's head, but moved slightly at the last second and struck the large dragon on the side of the head, which didn't faze him in the slightest. Divide. Tannin stumbled slightly as he felt his strength leave him. Issei was in a similar situation, struggling to move with the amount of power received from Tannin, trying to think of a good way to expel the energy quickly. After thinking about it, he stuck his hands in front of him and began charging a ball of pure magical energy. Tannin saw this and created a ball of fire between his jaws. Albion, instead of sending the energy out of the wings, is it possible to send it into the magic bomb? You should be able to, though it will use up a lot of your stamina at your current level. Issei nodded before focusing the energy into his hands, causing the ball to grow even larger than it was before. After focusing the excess energy into the attack, he fired it as soon as Tannin shot his fireball. The two attacks collided, both fighters pouring power into the blasts, hoping to overpower the other. Divide. Issei faltered once again as he felt more energy enter his body, quickly sending it into his attack. Tannin realized that he couldn't waste any time as his power would be divided again, so he tried to end the fight by increasing the power of his blast. Issei noticed that he was being pushed back, so he fired a burst of energy into his attack to buy himself enough time to escape the blast radius. After moving out of the way, he charged at Tannin, aiming to strike his head. Noticing this, the large dragon tilted his head to dodge. Issei used too much force on his punch, so he stumbled slightly, rendering him unable to dodge the oncoming hand flying his way. As the giant claw connects, Issei was sent crashing down into the ground, leaving a huge dust cloud as he impacted with the ground. Inside the crater was a barely conscious Issei, with his balance breaker armor long gone, covered in multiple bruises and wounds, struggling to stand up and breathing heavily. "Not yet, I can still fight," he spoke between gasps, wiping the blood from his lip. He attempted to reform his armor, but due to his lack of stamina, it dispersed quickly as he collapsed again. "That is enough," Tannin called out as he and Tetsaya landed near the crater Issei was in. "You may rest now, child, you did exceptionally well for one so young. That blast would have hurt if I didn't counter it." Issei smiled at the praise he was given. "You have the potential and resolve to become the strongest Hakuryuku to date. I will gladly train you." Issei smiled before finally passing out. "Thank you, Tannin, you have my sincerest gratitude," Tetsaya said while he picked up his son. "It's no problem, Tetsaya, I think I might enjoy training him. We will begin on the Monday of next week, so bring him back here on Sunday so he can get settled into his new home." Tetsaya nodded. "Is it alright if he can take the weekends off so we can see him then?" "Of course." "Thanks, do you still have the special ring I used for my own training?" "Yes, it's still where you left it, I will give it to him before we officially start." Tetsaya nodded again. "By the way, why not ask her to help train him?" "Maybe I could ask her. Not until Issei's older though. You know how Tiamat is, she'll see it as a waste of time unless he can put up a good fight." "I suppose you're right. Do you plan on giving him the sword?" "When he's older, yes." Tetsaya felt Issei move slightly in his arms. "I'll take him back home, he needs to rest for now so we can get all of his things packed. I shall see you in a few days then." Tetsaya. "Oh, and could you keep the fact that he is Albion's descendant a secret? It doesn't matter who the host of the Red One is, they would jump at the chance to fight the person who is, for lack of a better term, Albion reincarnated." Tannin nodded in acceptance. Tetsaya thanked him before he opened a dragon portal and waved to Tannin as the dragon flew back to his cave. After reappearing in his home, the first thing he saw was his wife with a worried look on her face when she saw the state of Issei, and after treating his wounds and laying him in his bed, she returned to the living room to speak to her husband. "What happened to him?" she asked worriedly. Tannin wanted to test his resolve, so they sparred. "I wouldn't worry too much, I doubt that he'll end up the same in the future." Hitomi nodded. "His training will begin Monday morning, so I'll take him over the night before. Tannin is preparing a place for him to stay, but he'll be back on the weekends." "Okay, we should probably start packing his things." Tetsaya nodded as the two left for Issei's room after grabbing his suitcase. The day finally came for Issei to move into dragon territory. He is currently stood next to the portal his father opened into Tannin's cave. After checking his belongings once again, he said goodbye to his mother and jumped through the portal with his father. The two were greeted by Tannin, who promptly guided the two to Issei's new home. After 5 minutes of flying, they eventually landed next to one of the smaller mountains. When Tannin began to explain, "This is where you will be living from now on. On the morning of every weekday, you will wake up at 6 o'clock, eat breakfast and get ready for the day of training." Issei nodded with a look of determination, but quickly turned into one of curiosity as Tetsuya reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box and gave it to Issei. "Issei, in here is the ring I used to help me with my own training." Issei nodded and put the ring on his finger, immediately feeling the effects as his body felt much heavier than before. "I call it the Gravi Band. It automatically adjusts your body to a weight slightly above what you can handle. You will need to wear this every day to help to gradually increase your speed and strength without doing anything. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can also adjust the amount of weight the ring applies by continuously focusing your magic into the ring, and as soon as you stop, it will return to the original weight." Issei began channeling a little bit of his magic into the ring to test it and promptly collapsed to the floor due to the pressure on his body. He stopped channeling his magic and stood up as his weight shifted again, allowing him to move more easily. "Alright, the first part of your training is to unpack your belongings with the ring active." Issei nodded and started picking up some boxes on the floor. "When you're done, I want you to stretch for 5 minutes and do 2 laps of the town." Issei paled as he heard that'll be your workout for today, so when you're finished you can do whatever you want for the rest of the day. Your real training starts at 7 AM tomorrow, so be up bright and early. "Hi," Issei replied as he began unpacking his items. Over the coming years, Issei would go about the same routine almost every day, wake up at 7, train with Tannin, eat, and then sleep. The first few weeks went by slowly, as all Tannin had Issei do was run to increase his stamina. However, after 2 months of running, they finally began what Issei referred to as the real training, increasing his strength and magic power. Time skip 4 years later. The 12-year-old Issei was lying on the grass, looking a little worse for wear as he had just finished his afternoon training with Tannin. As the years went by, Issei changed a lot. He was no longer small and scrawny, but fairly tall with a toned figure, unexpected of someone his age. He was now able to maintain balance breaker for 2 months and 1 week in Juggernaut Drive. He lay back, happily chomping away at some dragon apples. His mind wandered as he thought about what Tannin had told him a few days ago. Flashback: "You've improved greatly since our last spar, Issei, however there is still room for improvement. You still rely a little too much on Albion's power. Next time try and fight me with only your own strength." Tannin said and spoke again after seeing Issei nod. "By the way, 3 days from now you might be meeting someone important, so be prepared." "Hi, Sensei." Flashback end: "I wonder who Sensei wants me to meet." Issei mused to himself, but was cut off as he felt a familiar presence approach him, accompanied by 2 others, although these were unfamiliar to him. "Looks like Sensei's is here," he said, looking towards the purple dragon as he descended next to Issei. As Tannin landed, Issei noticed 2 others riding on his back. The first was a man with crimson red hair and blue-green eyes, wearing some sort of armor and a smile on his face as he looked at Issei. The second was a silver-haired buxom woman with matching eyes. She was wearing a blue maid's outfit with an unreadable expression on her face. Issei's eyes widened as he felt their power. "Whoa, they're stronger than Asen. Why do they want to meet me?" "So this is your student Tannin?" the man asked, his eyes never leaving Issei. "Yes, this is Issei Hyoudou, the current hacker." Tannin replied as he smirked at Issei's confused expression. The man seemed to notice this as well as he moved to introduce himself to the boy. "Ah, where are my manners? I am Surzich's Lucifer, one of the 4 Mayu, and this is my wife Graphia." The now named Graphia pulled out a Harrison and swiftly delivered a strike to the back of Surzich's head as she spoke. "My name is Graphia Lucifuge, headmaid of the House of Gremory. I apologize for my master's joke." "Nice to meet you both. My name is Issei Hyoudou. Please take care of me from now on," he replied with a bow. "Sensei, are they here to spar or something?" Before Tannin could reply, Surzich's smile widened. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. Graphia, why don't you test his strength, but don't go all out." Graphia sighed as she turned to Tannin. "Do you mind, Tannin?" The dragon laughed at the question. "Not at all, it might help the boy if he fights someone other than myself," Tannin said. Then he turned to Issei. "Well, brat, are you up for a fight?" Issei grinned and nodded vigorously as he got into a fighting stance. "When am I not?" Issei replied before activating his balance breaker. Within seconds, the snow-white armor was covering his body, although this time the armor was thicker than before, giving Issei more protection at the cost of some speed. Tannin and Surzich's moved to the side before calling for the start of the fight. "Begin." At the call, Issei charged towards Graphia with his foot cocked back while discreetly channeling fire into his left hand. As he reached Graphia, he threw his foot towards her left temple, which she easily dodged. However, she wasn't prepared for the fireball that was shot towards her stomach. The fireball connected and Graphia was blasted away from Issei. After regaining her balance she began to form a large ice spear and fired it at Issei, whose response was to create a barrier to block the spear. The attack collided with the barrier and struggled in an attempt to overpower it. Of course, if Graphia was using her full power, Issei would be dead by now. The spear and barrier both exploded, causing a cloud of smoke to appear. Issei took advantage of this and shot towards Graphia and sent a punch towards her abdomen too fast for her to dodge. As he connected, she flew back and landed on her feet. Divide. She stumbled as she felt the power leave her body before regaining her composure. She lifted her hands above her head, creating multiple ice spears in the air above her. Issei saw this and smirked, deciding to match her by creating the same amount of magic bullets and fired them at the same time as Graphia did, hoping to stall her until the next divide. The spears and bullets crashed against each other in a flurry of explosions. As the battle continued, Issei obviously had the upper hand as small beads of sweat rolled down Graphia's face as she was breathing heavily. Issei was doing a little better, although he was sweating slightly. Graphia realized that she couldn't win without using more of her power, so she did just that. She ceased in creating her smaller spears and formed a gargantuan spear above her head and threw it at Issei, while freezing his feet in place. He realized that he could not win the fight, so he surrendered. After hearing this, Graphia dispersed the ice as Issei did the same to his armor and fell backwards onto the soft grass. "Well, Graphia, what did you think?" Surzicha said as he and Tannin flew over to the two fighters. "He is incredibly strong for his age, Surzicha-sama. I even had to use more power than I had originally intended to," she replied with a small smile. Issei rubbed the back of his head, embarrassed at the praise he was receiving from the strongest queen. "Thanks, Graphia-san, but I know you were holding back a lot during our fight. Even so, you fought really well. I underestimated you and almost lost because of it." Issei nodded. "Surzicha-sama, it's almost time for your meeting." Surzicha's eyes widened in realization. "Ah, that's right. Well, anyway, it was nice meeting you, Issei." "Goodbye, Surzicha-sama, Graphia-san. It was an honor meeting you both," he bowed as the two left. "Well, brat, I must say you put up a good fight against the strongest queen. Your training is really showing some good results, but that doesn't mean you can slack off." Issei nodded and left for his home after being dismissed. Thus concluded his encounter with Amao Lucifer and the strongest queen, and as he lay in his bed, he had begun thinking about Akeno and his fight with the fallen angels. Time skipped 3 years later. After the fight with Graphia, Issei trained harder than before after his defeat, hoping to challenge her again when he could match her in strength. He was now 15 years old, and due to a spontaneous growth spurt, stands at 5'8", he had also decided to grow his hair out to his shoulders. Issei and his parents were now stood in the living room of the Hyoudou residence, now in Hyoudou, preparing for their vacation. Issei had received a call from his parents inviting him to go with them to Rome, which he eagerly accepted. Luggage in hand, the trio left for the airport, unaware of the awaiting problems. 3 days had passed since the Hyoudou family had arrived in Rome, and the trio had just finished lunch at a nearby restaurant. Issei had opted to separate from his parents, who were on their way to a museum, to do his own sightseeing in the other part of town. As he was exploring the city, he heard a commotion coming from a nearby alleyway. Deciding to investigate, he made his way to the noise and upon arrival, saw a group of at least 8 exorcists with light swords, fighting a rogue exorcist who was wielding a holy sword, a powerful one if the aura surrounding the sword was any indication. It had a large silver sword blade, attached to a bronze hilt without a guard. From the moment he arrived, Issei knew that the group of exorcists stood no chance, further proven by the fact that the rogue exorcist killed half of them in one slash and followed up with another, killing 3 more. Just as he was about to kill the last exorcist, Issei rushed forward and caught the sword in his hands. "Get out of here. I'll hold him off," he nodded before scrambling to his feet and running in the direction of the church. However, before he could reach the street, the rogue exorcist pulled out a gun and shot the man in his head, killing him instantly. The exorcist laughed maniacally before speaking. "You've got some real guts picking a fight with the great Fried Selzen. I'm going to enjoy cutting you down with my Excalibur-chan." Issei released the grip on the sword after kicking Fried in the stomach. After regaining his balance, Fried charged at Issei with his sword ready to strike, to which Issei swiftly dodged, and Fried brought the sword back for another swipe which Issei dodged again. Fried eventually stopped swinging. "I must admit, you're good, much better than those shitty priests." "Aren't you supposed to be a priest?" Issei questioned. Fried laughed at the question. "I used to be, but they didn't like my bloodlust so they kicked me out. I'm what most call a rogue priest, though I don't really care what I am as long as I can keep killing." "If the church kicked you out, then why do you have one of their swords?" "Oh, this little thing. I stole it. This is Excalibur transparency. Why don't I show you what it can do?" he said before disappearing along with the sword, much to the confusion of Issei. "What's wrong, you can't see me?" "Well, that's the ability of my Excalibur, so good luck winning now." Fried rushed forwards at Issei and swung his sword, which would have decapitated Issei had he not dodged at the last second, instead suffering a blow to his left arm. "You got lucky, boy, but next time I won't miss." "This is bad. I can't see him at all. How am I supposed to beat him?" Issei was panicking as he held onto his injured arm, dodging Fried's continued slices by millimeters. Do not fret, partner, just calm down and focus. That man is not a true holy sword wielder, so he is unable to tap into the true potential of the sword, Albion said. What do you mean, Albion? Issei asked, confused. I mean his holy element, it feels unstable. Perhaps the church have found a way to artificially create holy sword wielders. Anyway, because his element is unstable, you should be able to find a flaw, just concentrate. Issei nodded and quickly swung his foot behind him, knocking Fried away and causing him to reappear. You just got lucky, but it won't happen again. Prepare yourself, I will point you in the direction of his attack, but it's up to you to counter it. Issei got into a fighting stance as Fried disappeared again. Left. As Albion shouted, Issei turned left and saw a brief flash of Fried directly in front of him and threw his right fist towards his solar plexus. Fried grunted in pain as the attack connected, causing him to loosen his grip on the sword he was holding. Issei noticed this, so he kicked the sword out of his hand and caught it as it fell from the sky. Fried growled as he felt the sword pressed against his neck. I won't kill you, it's up to the church to decide your punishment, Fried laughed maniacally, confusing Issei. You can take the sword, but you won't be taking me, Fried said as he pulled a button off of his coat and threw it to the floor. Issei covered his eyes as the button exploded, creating a bright flash. When the light died down, Fried was gone, prompting an annoyed grunt from Issei. Damn it, he got away. Oh well, at least I got the sword back. Issei stood still and examined the sword. I suppose I should find the church and return it. Issei was beginning to leave the alleyway when he was confronted by a party of 5 exorcists, 4 of which were pointing light swords at Issei, while the remaining exorcist stepped forward pointing a large sword with an axe-like pommel at him. The sword itself seemed to radiate an aura of destruction. Stop where you are being placed in the custody of the church for the theft of Excalibur. Issei could not get a good look at the exorcists because they were all wearing hoods, but he was able to tell from the feminine voice that the one confronting him was female. Whoa, hold on a second, I didn't steal the sword, I just got it back from a rogue priest and was about to bring it back to you. The exorcist's eyes narrowed after hearing this. How do I know you're not lying? For all we know, you could be saying that just to get out of your punishment. Issei sighed. If I was the real thief, why would I still be here? From what I've seen, this sword can turn the wielder invisible, so I could easily use it to escape. Not to mention I was walking in the direction of the church before you stopped me. The exorcists all lowered their swords after the woman nodded to them. Very well, I will believe you for now, but you will still need to follow us and report to the church. Issei was confused about this. Why can't I just give you the sword to take back? The exorcist smirked and decided to stretch the truth. We need you to give a detailed report on what happened and who really stole the sword if you weren't a real thief. Issei sighed again. Fine, I'll come. Issei and the exorcists began walking and Issei held Excalibur towards the exorcist. Do you want the sword? No thanks, you can hold on to it. Issei narrowed his eyes in suspicion at the devious smirk on the exorcist's face, but complied nonetheless. As they arrived at the church, 4 of the exorcists walked off in another direction, while Issei and the remaining exorcist entered the huge wooden doors. The 2 walked into what appeared to be a waiting room of sorts. Please wait here, I'll go get the head priest. The exorcist left after seeing Issei nod and sit on the bench. After 5 minutes of waiting, the doors opened and in walked an old man with short gray hair, obscured by a large white hat with a gold trim adorning his balding head. He was also wearing what seemed to be a regular priest outfit, albeit even more pompous than usual. Next to him was the same exorcist that had guided him here, although her hood was lowered, making her head visible. In the place of the once threatening exorcist stood a beautiful young girl, sporting a head of long, blue hair with a strand of green falling down the right side of her face. The priest was the first to speak. Now before we begin, I suppose introductions are in order. My name is Tillian Kanata, High Priest of the Catholic Church here in Vatican City. He gestured to the girl behind him before introducing her. This is Zenobia Quarta, one of our exorcists and wielder of Excalibur Destruction. The newly named Zenobia just nodded. Issei Hyoudou, nice to meet you. I was told you wanted to talk about the guy who stole Excalibur. Transparency. Ah yes, could you tell us about what happened in full? Issei nodded and told them about the fight with the rogue exorcist. Zenobia was the first to speak again. Fried Selzene. The rogue priest who was excommunicated for killing his own comrades. To think he's come back. What shall we do? She asked, directing the question to Tillian. For now we need to consult the Archangel Michael Sama about this, but I think it'd be best if we scatter the Excalibur fragments throughout the various churches. Zenobia nodded. Tillian then turned to Issei. Thank you for recovering the sword for us, you have our gratitude. Issei nodded and held out the sword for the priest, whose response was to shake his head, much to the confusion of Issei. No, you may keep it. Do you know how to fight with a sword? Issei shook his head. I don't understand, this is one of your most important holy swords, don't you need it? Tillian smiked. Of course we do, which is why you'll return here tomorrow morning to begin your training with Griselda, our strongest exorcist. Issei's eyes narrowed. May I ask why? He asked, suspicion lacing his voice. Well, we can't have one of our exorcists run about with a sword and not know how to use it. What the hell are you talking about? Tillian smiled. Zenobia told me that you are able to wield Excalibur transparency. You are a natural-born holy sword wielder, therefore you will become an exorcist. I'm afraid you are mistaken. I have no intention of becoming an exorcist. I'm sorry, Issei, but that just won't do. God has blessed you with a gift, the power to wield holy swords. He bestowed it upon you so that you could become an exorcist and destroy the demons in his name. As it stands, you have no choice in the matter, either join the church or you will die before you get the chance to leave. We simply cannot risk a holy sword wielder joining the enemy. At this point, Issei was gritting his teeth, practically seething with rage. After taking a few moments to calm down, he answered, as I said before, I have no intention of becoming an exorcist, so I think I'll choose option B. Tillian sighed before speaking. I had hoped that it would not come to this. He turned to leave for his office. Zenobia, kill him and retrieve the sword. As he left the room, Zenobia removed her cloak, choosing to fight in the church's battle outfit, a black, skin-tight, one piece that accentuated every curve of her body. She raised a broadsword above her head and spoke to Issei. It's not too late to change your mind, you know. If you join the church, I won't have to kill you. As if you could. I have no intention of joining the church, so stop trying. After he said this, Zenobia charged at Issei, her sword ready to strike. Before she could swing, however, she was intercepted by Issei's foot and crashed into the wall at the opposite end of the room. Here, take the stupid sword, I'm just going to leave. He threw the sword to Zenobia's feet and walked towards the exit, only to be intercepted by a large number of exorcists. Damn it. Albion, any suggestions? Simple, just fly out. I know you're trying not to draw any attention to yourself, but this seems to be the only way to solve it without violence or risk of casualties. Other than that, you could try surrounding yourself in magic power and charge through them all. So very well. The exorcists began to surround Issei, but a bright flash caused them to avert their eyes, and before they could react, they were bowled over by a figure donning a pair of white wings, surrounded by a golden aura. Well, it's been fun, but I really have to go. The exorcists all looked on in defeat as they watched the boy they were supposed to kill simply stroll out of the front doors like nothing happened. As the exorcists were recovering, Zenobia ran straight for the high priest's office. Tillian Sama, the boy escaped. At hearing this, the high priest shot out of his chair. What? How did this happen? I seem to recall there being at least 40 other exorcists in the main hall. He was too strong, he knocked me down and charged through the others like they were nothing. Tillian just rubbed his temples and thought, where is he now? Last I saw, he just walked out of the church. That wasn't very long ago. Send out our best exorcists at once, he cannot be allowed to live. If the devils or the fallen angels get him on their side, it could spell trouble for us. Shouldn't we inform Michael Sama? With the angels aiding the search, surely we can find and kill him easier. No, there is no need to bother Michael Sama with something as menial as this. Just do as I asked and inform me if you find him. Yes, Tillian Sama. Zenobia bowed and left to inform the other exorcists. What Zenobia didn't know was that Michael did not condone the act of killing people who refused to join the church. Meanwhile, Issei had just returned to his hotel room. Walking through the door, his parents greeted him with a smile, which quickly morphed into worried looks as they noticed a still bleeding wound along his left arm. His mother was the first to speak. What happened to you? Issei winced as he rubbed his ears in pain. Can you patch me up first? My arm is starting to hurt. After getting his arm bandaged, he told his parents about what happened, from the encounter with the rogue priest to the church attempting to kill him. Fortunately, he and his father were able to quell Hitomi's rage and stop her from potentially destroying the church and killing the people responsible. The remaining days spent in Rome weren't very eventful. Issei had chosen to remain inside for the majority of the time due to the exorcists searching for him. Time skip 1 month. A month after returning from Rome, Issei and his father stood in the middle of an ominous forest. Looking up, he could see the sky was a dark purple color, a crescent moon illuminating the landscape. The two were currently trekking through the cave, supposedly searching for a cave of some sort. Where are we, Otu-san? We are in the familiar forest. Devils come here to create a pact with familiars. We are here to see an old friend of mine. Now that you're stronger, hopefully she'll help train you. But I've already got Tannin-sensei to teach me. Why do I need another teacher? Believe it or not, she's even stronger than Tannin. She also has a sword of mine for safekeeping. Even if she doesn't say yes to helping you, we can get the sword. The two eventually reached a clearing in the trees and stood in front of a large cave. She's in here, Issei. You might want to get ready, just in case she wants to test your mettle. Issei nodded and began stretching as Tetsuya stepped forward. He whistles loudly into the cave. Hello? Anyone home? After he shouted, a pair of yellow eyes can be seen in the darkness. The grunt is heard as a large blue western dragon steps out of the shadows. It's been a long time since you were last here, Tetsuya. Indeed it has, Tiamat. End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.